Hello and welcome to the Success Secret podcast with your host Hussein Talib. I am excited to introduce you to a series of conversations with some of the most successful and inspiring individuals from various industries. My aim is to dive into the stories behind their success and explore the knowledge, strategies, habits, mindsets, and wisdom that have propelled their success. Each episode of the Success Secret podcast will feature a different guest who will share their unique journey, the challenges they faced, and the lessons they have learned along the way. I will also be covering topics from entrepreneurship and innovation to leadership and personal development. Whether you are an inspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business professional, or just someone looking to improve your life, the Success Secret podcast is for you. My goal is to bring you valuable insights and inspiration that will help you achieve your own success in business and life. So get ready to learn and be inspired. The Success Secret podcast starts now. Hello and welcome, Success Secret Nation, to this new episode of the Success Secret podcast with your host Hussein Talib. With this episode, I have with me Cheryl Johnson. She is a performance solution specialist. She has spent her whole life developing solutions that enable people to perform at their best. She wrote the book Ambition, the Missing Quotient in Your Employees, because she saw a need to change the way we approach learning. Cheryl, welcome to the Success Secret podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome to have you here. So let me first begin with that performance solution specialist means, because we are as human beings look always for we try to achieve things and perform better always, but sometimes things get in the way, right? So how do we improve this side of us?
Well, there's a couple different approaches I guess I take. I started off my career as an instructional designer. Little did I know that the expectation when I went to work for people was that I would simply write instructions on, like a manual. Here's step by step how you complete a process. My expectation when I became an instructional designer was that I would create learning experiences that would help enable people to do things better and to improve the way they do things. And there is subtle differences. I guess if you think about it, you think about when you buy a new product and you open the owner's manual. Those are instructions. They teach you how to use whatever it is you just bought. Where I saw learning as a tool to help you perform better in your job or wherever, it may be. I'm also a certified mental trainer. So I work with sometimes athletes, but oftentimes they're just individuals who are wanting to improve their overall performance. Say you're a small business owner and you want to, improve your business outcomes, those types of things. I've said that learning is the fuel, to better performance. So kind of the crux of my approach is all about effective learning.
We as humans love to learn things, but sometimes these things take time, right? So what is the best way for us to, let's say, speed things up in the direction that we want to achieve?
My take on that is that it's really at the core learning to love learning. I think, as even from a young child, I guess where I started was when my kids were young. I noticed that, a lot of parents wanted to teach their kids the ABCs and how to count and, those types of things. And of course, you want to teach them to read. I felt like as a parent, if I could teach my kids to love the process of learning, that when they go to school, learning ABCs and those types of things will just kind of come natural. So rather than teach them to read, I taught them to love to read. And that was kind of a double-edged sword, because even when they were just 2-3 years old, I remember we bought this series of Disney books. They weren't just picture books, like you typically buy for a 2 or 3-year-old. They were, 20-page books with lots of words on them. And there was about 20 books in the series. And oh my gosh, we'd sit down to read a book, at night for a story, and they were like, oh, we're done with this book. Let's read another book. Let's read another book. Let's read another book. I'm like, no, we've got to go to bed, And to this day, my kids are very avid readers and they love reading. And so I didn't have to teach them how to read because I taught them to love to read. And, we go to school and we think, okay, we graduated high school. We're done learning now. We go into the work world. Oh, no, now we go to college. Okay, now we're done with college. We're done with learning. No more learning, because we see learning as somebody giving you information and you basically regurgitating it back. And then when you're done regurgitating it back, you say, oh, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. This is a big problem actually. Like you mentioned, when we finish school and college, it's basically like we're thinking now we are in the workplace. We don't really have to learn anything new anymore. We'll just go do this job and do this work, and that's it. And we will get paid. Though learning is not about where you are or your age, right? It's about personal growth. Like you want to improve yourself, because if you don't, it's about skill. If you don't improve your skills, some people around you will, and they will get, let's say, more money or a higher position or this kind of thing. So thinking that limiting yourself in that place is not good for you as a human being.
Exactly. And, in what kind of prompted me to write this book, and I started actually writing it 10 years ago, was being in the workplace and being a contractor. I worked with a lot of different organizations. One of the things I noticed was that people in the workplace weren't really interested in learning. 100 years ago, you could learn what you needed to learn in school and kind of go into the workplace, and information, or the flow of information, moved so slowly that it wasn't that big of a deal. You could learn gradually, bit by bit, and be okay. But in the world we live in today, it's crazy. I mean, the flow of
You can't keep up.
Yeah. And so, from a personal perspective, I always tell people it's your responsibility to develop a love of learning and to take that responsibility upon you. But I also tell employers, and I have found this to be true, you hire, let's say, a college graduate, and within a couple of years, whatever they did learn in those, 15, 16 years of school doesn't necessarily mean they're going to know what they need to know to do the job today. So I think our employers need to become institutions of learning. And, we have a marketing department, a sales department, a production department, all those kind of things. And for compliance reasons, a lot of times an organization will have a learning department, but they don't have a learning department to really enable their employees. And
that's really active. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like they might have something, but really the only thing that is in the process or that sent employees, maybe these things that about, like you mentioned, these kind of compliance things that you have to adhere to internal things or policies of the company. It's not like they send the employees like, this is, for example, a course for you to develop the skills in a certain particular area. This is the problem, I think, with organization and especially big businesses, that a lot of them don't support their employees. They want them just to only do the work, the task that they do on daily basis, and just go home and come the next day do the same thing.
And people get bored.
Of course.
And they don't know, how to move themselves forward within the organization. A lot of times organizations, especially big organizations, will have a sales training or leadership training. But to me, the problem with a lot of their approach is they take people out of the workplace and they send them to a class and they teach them all of these really in-depth theoretical things about leadership and about sales, and then they send them back to work. And then there's this huge gap because people don't know how to bridge the gap between, oh, this is what I was doing in this class, which typically is a very sanitized learning approach. It's like, we're going to teach you the perfect way to do this. But then you get back into the workplace and the workplace is like, it's not at all sanitized. It's like, oh, I have this problem. You didn't teach me how to do this. You didn't teach me when this goes wrong, how to do this kind of thing. And one of the stories I always tell in the book, and I frequently tell people, is many years ago, I started a business, and I wanted to teach disabled people how to use computer technology. And it was when assistive technology was first coming on the market. And I was married to a person who was blind. And so it seemed like a good fit, except problem number one is I had no experience with computers. I mean, I had been a secretary and I had typed on a typewriter, but I'd never used a computer really. So I was jumping into the deep end of the pool, not knowing anything about computers, not knowing anything about assistive technology. So I went to take a training course from a reseller of this assistive technology, which was voice recognition technology. This is how long ago it was, like early 1990s. And we paid a lot of money for this, to become a reseller. And I had to buy this laptop computer, and it was really challenging to get there. It was in the middle of the winter. All the flights were delayed. I mean, I literally got in at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and the class started at 9. And I was dead tired. And it was just, the whole thing started off on the wrong foot. And, within an hour or two of being in the class, my computer didn't work. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they brought in a tech support. The class moved ahead and was doing what they were doing. And the tech support, I sat there and watched them fix my computer. Well, the next day I come in and my computer didn't work. And this was the computer they provided to me. It wasn't my brand new computer. And for the 5 days I was there, I can tell you, I was so far behind the class because my computer just never worked. And no matter what new computer they brought in, it just didn't work. And I know, I was so frustrated. I just spent like $10,000 on the computer and, this reseller license and all this kind of stuff. And I went home and I just cried. And I took my computer, my laptop that I'd bought and all my books, and I threw them in a closet. And I was like, well, that was the biggest waste of my time and waste of my money. I was so frustrated. But then it's not my nature to give up. So a couple of weeks later, I pulled the laptop out of the closet, pulled the tutorials out that they'd provided to me. And slowly I started going through things. I'd come across an issue, and this didn't work. And I was like, oh, but I learned how to do that. Other people were learning what was in the manual, what was in the tutorial, how to use voice recognition technology. I was so busy learning how to make the computer compatible with the software that I wasn't necessarily learning what was in the tutorial, but the tutorial was pretty good. So I was able to walk myself through the tutorial and all the while fix all the problems that came up because I was learned in an environment where everything didn't go right, And I think a lot of times we get really frustrated if we pay for especially a learning experience. And the whole time we're just frustrated because things aren't working. Things aren't going according to plan.
Exactly. But like you talked about something very important, like the circumstances did not go your way, but you did not give up. You wanted to motivate yourself and inspire yourself, and you made learning for yourself work. So this is the most important thing that you have. If there is nobody around in the business or corporation or this big entity to help you out, like you have to do your own thing. You have to learn by yourself. You have to motivate yourself to advance yourself, right? So how important this area is.
It is. And that's kind of leads me back to the title of my book, The Ambition Quotient.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Where do you get this ambition?
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Why did I have what it took to become that person? And I look back at, my own family circumstances, and I grew up in a family of highly successful people who, when they went to school, they got good grades. They were athletes. They were the top athletes. And I wasn't. I just wasn't the most gifted student in school. And, everything I got in school was because I had to study. I had to learn. I had to overcome challenges. I wouldn't say I had a learning disability by any means, but I certainly wasn't as gifted. And I felt so, at the time I felt so slighted. Like, why is it that I can't be like my brothers and sisters and my mom and dad? They're so gifted at everything they do. And my mom used to tell me, she says, it's really a blessing that you're not so gifted. She said, because you had to work to learn things, and you had to, just kind of like the experience I just shared. If I would have gone to that class and everything would have worked just fine, when I went back home, and I lived in Wyoming, we didn't have cell phones at the time. And oftentimes I would go train a person with a disability. I would be on site at their home or their office, and I would be sometimes out of phone. I'd be up on top of a mountain. I laughed the one time I literally was on top of a mountain in Casper, and the person didn't even have a phone. So I had no way to access any help. Most of the time I had a phone, and I could call my brother, who was, into computers and things. And when things didn't always work, he could help me out. And through that process, I just learned so much about computers and, that type of thing, which led to a relatively successful business, teaching people, with disabilities how to use computers. So, even my brothers and sisters to this day, they'll tell me, as they've moved on in life, they've really struggled as adults because they didn't learn when they were young how to work to learn things. They had a good work ethic, but they just didn't know how to teach themselves because they were so reliant upon teachers or someone else to, impart knowledge to them, I guess.
And also we know that like when we learn, we need to, like we mentioned also, that we need to also apply this into certain area in our business or in our life, because without action, knowledge is basically maybe useless. It's not like it's power, it's maybe potential power, right? So how does knowledge and learning help us get more to take action and see the results? Because we can be in love, for example, in business, we can be in love for the results that we are going to achieve, or for example, what we actually doing, that we are serving people in it.
Well, that kind of leads me to another story. And I'll share the actual story, but it's very commonplace. A couple of them here. One of my biggest frustrations in the workplace, and like I said, going back, 10 years ago, I started doing a lot of research into this area. Employers complain because the people that they're hiring are lacking basically 5 characteristics: creativity, teamwork, communication skills, problem solving, and resilience. I always have to think about them. And those are the core things that allow us to take knowledge and, turn it into actionable, meaningful work, that produces results and that makes us feel good. My daughter got a job. She was really excited. She finally graduated from college and all that good stuff. And she got out into the work world, and she went to work for a large insurance company. And the first thing they did was sit her down at a computer, and none of her, computer, she didn't have the proper credentials yet to log onto the computer to access, the information that she needed and all the forms and everything. So for the first week or two, she sat there and did nothing but read a book. I mean, all she had was a badge that she could, here's your parking pass, here's your badge to get into the building. And she would just sit there. And, she was so excited about this job, and she was all motivated. And then they come in and they're like, oh, no. And then after sitting there for 2 weeks, they shipped her off to Chicago to sit in the classroom for another 2 weeks, which she said was good. But when she got back, once again, she didn't have there was a gap there. How do I take this information and do this? And so her motivation level, her ambition just
dropped,
because she was just discouraged, and one of the contract jobs that I had where I really felt like they were really doing a great job was the first day I was on the job. I had access to everything. But the most important thing I had access to was a mentor or a coach. And they gave me a project. And it wasn't just some, here, go do this, and when you're done, let me know so we can say that we taught you something. It was a meaningful project. It was something that, was going to have an impact on a potential client, a huge potential client that we were working with. And honestly, I was kind of scared. I was like, whoa, this is a lot. I just started today. I don't want all this responsibility kind of thing. But I had a coach and I had a mentor, and she really helped me, work through this project. And that, I had come to the table with a certain amount of knowledge, and they were banking on the fact that I had that knowledge by throwing me into this. But even though I was scared and I was nervous, I was excited that they had put that confidence in me. And I wasn't bored. And I had somebody that was like, okay, here, let me give you these 1, 2, 3 steps. You go do these 1, 2, 3 steps, and then you come back to me and we'll talk. Or if during those 1, 2, 3 steps I didn't understand something, just come back to me and we'll talk and we'll work it out. We need to, as employers, we need to give people meaningful work.
Exactly. Yeah.
And especially right out of the gate when you first hire them.
Yeah. Like when you get the first day, you're excited, you want to do certain things, and you get like, you don't have access, you don't work for like 1 to 2 weeks, maybe more, because they call it a training, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but there is not really that much training. So yeah, you have to make people involved from the beginning.
When you believe in somebody, they want to rise to those expectations. The other thing is Google actually is one that does this. I don't know if they still do it, 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was doing a lot of research. I came across them, and I came across a company over in Europe, and they actually encourage their people in their downtime, and they give them a certain amount of downtime to take on a project that's of interest to them. And they fully expect they're going to fail. And that's okay, because failing, you learn so much in the process. If you think of video games, to me, video games are kind of a double-edged sword here.
Yeah, it is. It's fun for like an hour, maybe a week or 2 weeks, but then continuously playing games is not it's not good.
But think about when people build a video game. It's like most kids, now adults, we get the manual out and look at it and try to figure it out, and it doesn't work. But kids, they just jump in and they start playing, and they have these little cheats. We call them cheats, and in the real world, we're not supposed to cheat, but they use these cheats to kind of figure out how to, navigate the game. And as they navigate, they get moved on to a higher level. And as they navigate that, they get moved on to a higher level. And that's kind of how learning should be. It should be scaffolded in such a way that we learn these few things. And we need cheats. We need job aids. We need a coach. We need a mentor. We need somebody to help us. And then we can just keep leveling up, And as we level up, we get more and more excited and motivated to keep playing the game.
Yeah, exactly. This is what should be happen, because like we mentioned earlier, it's about the growth. So growth will take you one step at a time. You cannot jump for example, to the 12th level just with one click. You have to go through 1 through 12. You cannot jump all the levels at once. You have to go through them one by one. So can you give us the most important pointers in your book, Ambition?
The most important thing, I think, are those 5 things that I told you. Kind of back to Google on this. I wish I could remember the name of this company over in Europe. But like I said, they expect people to fail. They expect people to try things and fail. And first of all, you'd have to be a relatively large company to do this, so you could absorb some of the cost. When you allow people to fail and learn from those failures, that's where you develop creativity, and you develop teamwork, because in working on your project, my master's degree, I got through an action learning program, which kind of illustrates these 5, things that I'm talking about. I didn't go take the GRE and get admitted to grad school and, do the typical route. What I did was I was working for a company, and I got to pick my project, what I wanted to do for my master's program. It was 1.5 years long. And during that time, I had to implement this program. And to do that, I had to use a lot of creativity. I had to design the project, and then I had to go around to all the people in the organization, the different departments, and say, okay, here's how your department can help me. And this is how I had to talk to people. I had to work with people. I had to bring people together to say, how would this work? And like every 3 months, I'd have check-ins with my coach or mentor, and we'd go through what I was doing. And, I had to learn to communicate. I had to learn to communicate with different people of all different stripes, all different generations, all different cultures. Our company was definitely a multicultural company. And in addition to that, I had to build resilience when things didn't work. I had to go back and try again. I had to redesign the project. And at the very end of the project, to be honest, the project failed, and I was like, oh no, the company decided not to move forward with this, learning program that I had designed. And I was like, oh, I guess I don't pass. I don't get my degree. I got an F. This is not good. F for failure. Ooh, written all over my face, a scarlet letter right on my forehead, But no, they said, no, you went through the process. And at each stage of the game, you learned something. And the reason that they didn't move forward with my learning program had nothing to do with all the work I had done. It had to do with the fact that my coach or mentor, actually, she had retired. They brought on a new person, and this new person was like, no, I'm going to do things my way. I
Yeah,
don't care you know how that goes, right? But that's real life.
Yeah, this is the most important thing is the process. And failure, like in school, a lot of people or students fear when they fail an exam, but for me, I didn't really care if I failed, because I know if I failed, it does not mean I did not study and did not prepare for it at all. For example, if I get certain grades, for example, for a certain exam or certain project, I know if I am going to get 100 out of 100, because I know that I not only prepared, I maybe over prepared. so failure is not something to stop on and put a period on, and that's it. You have to start in with a new line and go at it again, because you can teach yourself new things. You can see things differently. Maybe you will see some opportunities there you missed. So it's not like life stops at failure, whether it's in business or in life in general.
Exactly. And I think schools in general should, take that to heart. I'm actually doing some contract work right now for a university. And I really like their program, because you don't move on until you reach a certain, level of competency. And it's not like, oh, we have a, quarter, a term. I can't even think. I'm just so long since I've been in college, but you have a 9-week period, right? At the end of that 9-week period, if you don't, if you get an F, you certainly have to take it over. But if you even get a C or a D, you pass. But that doesn't mean you really learn the information. The way this university is structured is, you don't move on until you reach a certain level of competency. That's it. And if you don't, if the first time or two that you go through the information, you don't learn it, you have an advisor, a coach, somebody to help you get that information and move on. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of, only moving on to the next level, just like in video games. You don't move on to a certain level till you reach a certain level of competency. And it isn't that you failed.
Exactly. It's not like the end of the end of life. So you can do it again. So do you think that we missed talking about learning here, or teaching something that's important and value to people, and we can talk about?
I think in general, like I said, going back to what I said at the very beginning is really important, is that we as employees, or, when we first get a job, I think it is on us to make it clear to our employer that we really want to do meaningful work. And it's on our employers to make sure that we're doing meaningful work right from the beginning, and that we're given the tools and the support to make it happen. I was also pre-COVID, I was actually working out in California, I live here in Virginia, but I was working for another university, and I got assigned 5 interns to work for me. And when they first came, no joke, one of my interns would literally go into these, we had these, it was one of those environments where all of the office was set up in cubicles, and we had rooms where you could go have meetings, little things. I can't remember what those rooms were called, but one of my students literally every morning would go into that room, put his hoodie on, pull it over, turn the light off, and sit there and sleep. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I motivate this guy? How do I get him going, And my boss, who happened to be the publisher of my book, by the way, he had this side job, creating this publishing company. He just laughed at me. He looked at me, he goes, go read your book. And I was like, oh yeah, I did write a book on this, didn't I? What I did was I went and said, hey, what do you like doing? And he told me, and I said, oh, well, guess what? I have a project you can do. And it was amazing. After that, he came into work. He turned on the light, no hoodie, no sleeping. And he worked on weekends. He'd call me sometimes on weekends and say, hey, I'm working on this. I need more help. I need more guidance. What do you need? I was like, whoa, he really did some great work.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, it's important to have sometimes having a mentor or a teacher that knows how to deal with people also important, because sometimes people, they have something to do, something to share, something to get done. But if they don't have, let's say, maybe this first direction to put them on the first step, because they don't know the first step. When they know the first step, what is it? So they will go and work on it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So Cheryl, where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and what you do?
You can go to theambitionquotient.com. And, if you want my book, it's short and sweet and to the point. I'm a firm believer of getting straight to the point. And I'm happy, to share that with you. There's a contact information on there, and just let me know and I can send you a copy of the book. It's free. I feel like the information is really valuable in there and that people need it. So I'm willing to just share it with people and let them read a little bit more. It's full of anecdotes and stories about, exactly what we've been talking about.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today with me on this episode, Cheryl.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share. As you can tell, I love to talk about this.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Success Grid. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you found value in the show, rate and leave a review on iTunes. For more resources, visit successgrid.net. Until next time.